Now, time to play the Is It Working game. That is a game I always have to play because I am always so bad at this technology stuff. Alrighty, let's. Boom. Does that look good? I think that looks good. Does my voice come in? It's telling me my voice is coming in. Time to see. Hello for anyone and everyone that's joining in. I can hear you look good. You sound good. Thank you. I'll especially take the I look good into consideration because that's truly what I care about is my vanity. So thank you. I am going to be setting things up here, but if you've got any burning questions, feel free to spout them away because I am down to clown Buster Brown. I've got things I want to talk about as well, so I'll be delving into that momentarily. But like I said, I want to be diving into some fun bits here. Where is that one? I want to dive into this one. Yes. I found it. It came in so wimpily. Why is that? I wanted big. Is like be big? There we go. There's that cool looking one. I love this poster. It looks freaking badass. And then there's another poster. Oh yes, I know the one. I know it. I feel it. I see it. I can smell it. This, yes. No. Oh, dear Lord. No, please. Oh God, did it turn out awful? So, for those of you that don't know, I am not cool enough to have multiple monitors. I'm not like the cool kids. So, a lot of the time, I'm basically just forced to do everything on the same page, and it looks dreadful. Really, it looks just dreadful. It's an unfortunate thing here, but it is what it is. Um, Yeah, I think that looks Gucci. I think I can scoot this over more, right? How's it? Okay, I think I can do that. I can do that. Okay. Alrighty. And now to try and drum up some peoples. I couldn't imagine using one monitor. Shows how privileged you are. Shows how high and mighty you got it up there in that ivory tower of yours. Because I have been, living a life on the edge with one monitor, and it sucks. But you gotta do what you gotta do. You know, some of us just don't have accommodations where we can have multiple monitors or chairs or things. Not all of us are privy to that. Um, yeah, let me just throw it up there in announcements. Time to pimp myself out. Bro, that's rough. I'm with Sam on this. Hey, multi-monitor privilege, also chair privilege. Our privilege is showing. All y'all's privilege is showing. Y'all got it so easy. Y'all got it so nice. You know, some of us are just, not so privileged is what it looks like. Not all of us are so privileged. Where would I put? I guess I'll put it here. I'm just trying to paste this stream wherever I can get it. Because that's what you're supposed to do as a YouTuber. You're supposed to care. You're supposed to show off and all that fun jazz. I'm so bad at doing that. I'm just so bad at like showing off all that stuff. I really am. It's no bueno. Okay. Also, thanks for your Strahd guides. I've used them to help run Curse of Strahd campaign. We're at level 7 and getting close to done. Your vid's really helpful. And thank you. That's why I made them, because the 5e modules are traditionally the introduction for not only just players, but also DMs of 5e. And quite frankly, those books are too much. They don't actually teach you how to run the game. They don't actually teach you what to look out for, and I really think that's one of the biggest errors of pretty much every tabletop role-playing game. Not every tabletop role-playing game, but a lot of them is they teach you about the game, but they don't teach you how to run the game. And that's something I really want to do. I really want to transform my works on the module guides into, hey, here's not just this info for me to regurgitate, but I want to say, here's how you can run it and my suggestions. Because, like I said, those books are just way too much. And some of the books, just quite frankly, aren't good. As written, anyway. Like, every single one of the adventure modules has an amazing adventure and an amazing story to tell. But the way it's presented doesn't lend itself to the magnificence that it could be. I think Curse of Strahd kind of falls in that regard. Curse of Strahd can be a fantastic adventure module, but if you run it purely along the lines of as written, and if you are a newer DM and you've got newer players, it could be a disaster. So, and something, once again, I really want to look into discussing more, and I want to make more videos on that regard. Because, I think it's really important that when we get new people into the hobby, their first experience need to be fantastic right from the get-go. Much like with every show, you need to hook them in the first episode. Much like with every, card you test drive, it needs to feel good. The same thing needs to happen with tabletop role-playing games. You need to get them in when the getting's good. If they get bombarded with info that they don't care about, if they just genuinely don't have a good time, if, there's too much math or dice involved, if there's too much nonsense, if it just doesn't feel good, then that's going to be one less customer in the future. So I think, first impressions are truly important in our tabletop role-playing game hobby. Agreed. I said I was going to run Curse of Strahd as written, and then lasted 1.5 sessions before I realized that was a terrible idea. Yeah, that's the funny thing is there are some people out there that are purist. There are genuinely some people out there that try to run the adventure modules along the lines of as written. There are people that are trying to, trying to not deviate. But what I'll always tell people is anyone could run the adventure purely as written. Only you can run that adventure your way. And that's what I would strongly recommend is don't run the adventure as written because, if you as a DM don't get to shine, you're just regurgitating the words on the page. Run it your own way. Make that adventure yours. Make your players not appreciate just the content, but the quality of the content and the way it's presented, the way you present it. Hey gang, what's Gucci? What is Gucci gang? What is Gucci gang? A Gucci gang. That's what all the cool kids say these days, right? They start, dancing and saying yeet and gang and ya. That's what they do, right? I'm unfortunately been a little bit out of the loop in regards of what the cool kids do these days. Little bit unfortunate in that regard. Or more than likely pretty fortunate in that regard that I haven't had to deal with that. Actually, I guess I should. Nope. No. Oh, I really can't do that now. Is there Control Z? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so as people come in, like I've said, this is gonna be just an open Q&A. Y'all can hop right on in and ask me some of those burning questions about anything and everything. It can be about tabletop role-playing games, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But my expertise is always limited in certain factors, so you can't ask me the meaning of life, but you can ask me what the meaning of D&D is and other tabletop role-playing games. And in the meanwhile, as I'm answering these questions, I will be talking to you all about the games that I'll be running pretty soon here, because I will be having a good old-fashioned open season in the next coming weeks. And in fact, actually, I think by tomorrow, I'll have a full schedule. In fact, I'll post up the draft of the schedule here. I'll have a full schedule of the games that I'll be running that you all can participate in, because I'll be running a whole bunch of games for all the lovely people in the community, because there is some games that need to be ran, and I'll be the one to run them. Yeah, let's drop that. So there we go. That's my little mock-up there of what's going to be my my calendar. I'm going to have basically the game and what time it is for anyone and everyone to join. It'll be up on the YouTubes. It'll be up in the Discord, and I'm hoping to get a lot of people. Now, with these public games, I'll be running two different games. I'll be running Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel when it comes out on the 21st, or the 19th. I could have sworn it said on the 19th. Never mind. Yeah, I'll be running that when that comes out on the 21st. And I'll be basically running one of the adventures per day. And in between those games, I will also be running some Dungeon Crawl Classics games. And those are for the World Tour. For those of you that don't know the backdrop here, last year when Candlekeep Mysteries came out, I ran all 17 of those adventures in the course of a week. I ran 2 of the adventures a day for a week straight. It was just 2 games a day, and then the first day there was only 1 game because 17 is an odd number, and that was we called it Candlekeep Hell Week. That's what we called it. And so I want to do this tradition with all these anthology adventures where I get random people, I run these adventures, and we just have a good time as a community. So I want to keep that tradition alive with this anthology, running Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. And so that's going to be a blast there. And when it comes to the DCC games, that is basically Goodman Games. They are basically putting on a event, and they say, hey, run games and publish them and make them public. And, it's just a big old community effort. So I want to take helm in that, and I want to, pump out a bunch of content for that. And that'll be a blast. That'll just be basically me running a bunch of games for the community. So that'll be a ton of fun. I haven't had the chance to check out Journey Through the Radiant Citadel. What's your Cliff Sparknotes take on it? Oh, snap. I thought it was already out. Yeah. So it's not out yet. It is not out yet. They released the first of the adventures, but the full-blown book hasn't come out yet. And Basically, I've got my hopes up because I thoroughly enjoyed the majority of the previous, anthology adventures. In fact, I want to say, like, so far we have 3 anthology adventures. We have the good old-fashioned Tales from the Yawning Portal, we have Ghost of Saltmarsh, and we have Candlekeep Mysteries. Now, the first 2 are a little bit of a cop-out because the good old-fashioned Saltmarsh and Tales from the Yawning Portal, those weren't new adventures. Those were old adventures just retrofitted to 5e. Now, I've got my own feelings on those, and I'll be making my videos on those pretty soon here, talking about all these anthologies. But basically, some of those adventures were great renditions in 5e, and I think some of them kind of lose their essence when they were transferred to 5e. Now, when it came to Candlekeep Mysteries and Journeys to the Radiant Citadel, these were made specifically from the ground up for 5e. And to that regard, I think they did really well. When it comes to Candlekeep Mysteries, of the 17 adventures, I would say that the majority of them were pretty good. I personally think that some of them were not so great, and there is some, unfortunately, controversy behind some of those. Specifically, one got gutted by Wizard of the Coast without the author's permission, and it was pretty sad. But the majority of them were good. And I'm really hoping that Wizard of the Coast has learned what makes a good adventure good and makes Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel awesome. Alrighty. Any tips for dinosaur racing in Port Nyanzaru? Oh yes, I love me some good old Port Nyanzaru. So when it comes to Port Nyanzaru races, there is this thing where when you say, hey players, there's dino racing, inevitably you're going to have some people that are going to try and cheese it. You're going to have people that are going to try and sabotage it. You have people that are going to try and fix it. You're going to have people that, maybe don't even want to participate. You're going to get a number of different things. So what I'm going to tell you is, unless you know your players by heart, and mind you, this is, incredibly hard to predict, you're probably not going to know what's going to happen ahead of time. So unfortunately, you're going to have to prepare for a little bit of... Unfortunately, you're going to have to prepare a little bit of everything. Now, purely as written, it says that basically you kind of just like take over, these NPCs that are running through this. But typically what I do, in all the many times I've ran it, I allow my players to ride themselves. And that adds to a ton of the fun and a ton of the carnage. As they race, basically they can be making skill checks, and as they're succeeding or failing, then you get to narrate, oh yeah, Big Thumper is making its way through, and then, a banana candy is racing past and all that fun jazz. And I think that inserting themselves into it is a ton of fun. Now, if you have nefarious people that specifically are trying to fix it, trying to cheat or whatever, then I would say run with it. But make sure that they are aware of the consequences. Port Nyanzaru is a town where thieves get their hands cut off. Port Nyanzaru is a town where criminals are thrown into a pit with dinosaurs or zombies and are, and they have to like run for their life, right? So I would make sure that my players know that ahead of time, maybe see that information before they decide to try and cheat. And if they cheat and they are successful, then props to them. And if they cheat and they're unsuccessful, then they get to have another full-blown adventure with with having to do the death run. And that leads to further adventure, and more importantly, that can lead to further NPCs interacting with the party. So my solution here is tips on running it. Prep a little bit of everything. Allow them to join the races and prepare for consequences. Because, Port Nyanzaru is such a structural key part of the campaign of Tomb of Annihilation. It very much so is an old school adventure in regards of you've got civilization and then wild. Go out in the wild, get gold, return to civilization, spend gold, repeat process. And I really love that for it. So, that's just one of the many ways that they can earn gold by, doing the dino races, whether they're just betting on them and you just narrate, a little thing off to the side. Or if they join it and your players are rolling dice, you're rolling dice against them. Whatever the case may be, it's a fun time. Hold up, which one got gutted? So that one was Book of Cylinders. Basically, the long story short is the Book of Cylinders was written, and it was basically going to depict the not the Gripply, or is it the Gripply? The frog people. Oh my gosh, I think it is the Gripply. And it depicted the Gripply in a certain way, and there was more story beats going on, and basically there was a lot more nuance to the adventure. And the writer wrote it, he submitted it, and months go by, and then eventually Wizards of the Coast publishes the adventure. Now, in between that time, I think it was like 6 months or so, maybe even 8 months, during that time, there were some revisions, and the writer was not consulted on this. In fact, none of the writers were consulted about any of the revisions that were done to their books, or to their specific, little adventure that they wrote. And for some of the revisions, they were not terrible. They didn't remove too much, or maybe they added a little bit more here and there. They changed some words or pacing up a little bit. But for other adventures, they are a bit more drastic. I actually have an interview on my channel with two of the authors of some of the adventures. I have an interview with the author of the first adventure, Fun with Dimensional Spaces, I believe it is. I'm totally blanking off the top of my head. And another interview with the person that wrote Xanthoria. And they both talked to me about their original concepts for their adventures and how they basically got changed over the editing process. And then they both, acknowledged that there was some changes that happened beyond their control. Now, the real issue with specifically the Book of Cylinders is that the changes were so drastic that it didn't even resemble it didn't resemble clearly enough the product that was submitted. And so the author was furious. The author requested that their name get taken out of future printings, and they vowed to no longer work with Wizards of the Coast. And what's doubly unfortunate about that is not only was there that big old controversy behind this one adventure, the Book of Cylinders, in my personal opinion, it is the worst adventure in that whole lineup of 17 adventures. And I know that is not the author's fault, because the author clearly had more. It sounds like whoever was working at Wizards of the Coast gutted it. And we don't know why. They've never publicly stated. But it happened. So, yeah, it's really unfortunate. It really, really is. I'm hoping that basically I'm not only am I going to be running the journeys through the Radiant Citadel, but I'm also hoping that I can potentially interview some of the authors as well and talk about their creative process for this book, because I'm genuinely curious. I love interviewing people. In fact, if I could, I would love to just interview people all the time for my channel. Unfortunately, the interviews don't get as many views, not all the time, and unfortunately, not everyone says yes to my request. But, I love interviewing people. I love getting people to talk. Because as much as I am sitting here talking to you all, I'm not typically the one that wants to be talking. There's a reason why I like to DM the way I do, is because I don't want to grandstand and, be the one presenting. I want to present things and get other people to action in on it. My DM style is that I like to present a scenario really quickly and then have the players do all the interaction. When it comes to my interviewing style, I like to present questions and get them talking and talking. I love that stuff. I love getting people to divulge what's up. I love seeing people's interactions because I don't know. I just like getting people to do things. Has there been any word on the OG author releasing their version? From my understanding, that would not be legally allowed. From my understanding, I believe. I mean, I'll see if I can try and find the link here. But basically, long story short, Book of Cylinders. I don't know if the author. I don't know if the author. Yeah, let me see if I can find it here. I'll post it in the the chat here for you. This little link here. But basically, long story short, he signed an NDA, and I believe that he probably signed something in which he's not allowed to, release his version. I had to look through the whole legalese of the matter, but I'm willing to bet that's the case. And like I said, it's really unfortunate. That guy talks a lot about. He used to talk a lot about Wizard of the Coast, and Wizard of the Coast actually hired him on, I believe, because he was advocating for better gaming. And then Wizard of the Coast turns around and basically, just guts his adventure. For what purpose? I don't know. I don't know if they had to fulfill a certain word count. I don't know if they didn't like his drafts or whatever. I don't know, but it genuinely seems odd to me that you would basically have people write adventures, submit them, and then not talk about what needs to be changed. I personally have written adventures for other content creators, and once again, my writing style isn't the most concise in regards of minute little details. I typically write more about, just vaguish things, not exactly the most concrete things. And I submitted an adventure like that was kind of more on the vague side of here's what can happen, here is kind of the area, go. And then the author was or not the author, but the the person said, hey, how about you write more of this and you get rid of that and do this and do that. And then I was like, okay. And I think that's a lot healthier for the publisher or the whoever it is to say, hey, here's what we need changed. How about you change it versus just changing it without their knowledge, Very, very strange. Very odd. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, man. Have you played DCC Linkmar? What's your opinion on the setting? Wouldn't you freaking know it? What are the chances here? I'll go ahead and copy this here. Wouldn't you freaking know it? Look at this. I have in my palms here the Greatest Thieves in Lankmar, which is the level 3 adventure box set, which is totally hype, totally awesome. And wouldn't you know it, as I scroll through a whole bunch of these, Look at that. I've got a whole bunch of Lankmar adventures here. And I will, in fact, be reviewing these for my channel, and I'll be discussing them in length. My thoughts on DCC Lankmar is I like it. I like Lankmar because I find that when people typically run the air quote typical adventure of fantasy, it's usually going out into the world. It's usually going to fantastical places. It's usually going off into some weird, places, and it's usually just about going places, right? And one thing I really like about Lankmar is I love the idea of a campaign where it's just a nonstop, city, and this city basically is just is basically coming to you. I really like that because at all times you feel like you're home, but there's something around the corner that's going to shank you in the back. Or you go to do a simple job for somebody and it ends up that you end up in like, you end up fighting some rat people, or you end up in an alternate dimension or in someone's painting or something. So I really like Lankmar because of that. And also, what's also nice about Lankmar is the change up to some of the rules in regards of there's no cleric, but you can use your luck for healing and things like that. I really dig it. I think it's also very healthy for like if you are running just a single system, like if you only play in DCC. I think it is healthy to play in different worlds, because if you play in the same world, it'll feel samey. So I really like bouncing back and forth between, if you're playing traditional DCC, then you're in this generic fantasy world that's, wacky and gonzo. But then you go to Lankmar and it feels a bit more structured. And then you go maybe play, MCC, and then it's wacky, I really like the dichotomy between all that fun jazz. So I absolutely dig it. It's a fun time to have hijinks in a chaotic town. And yeah, that's and that, if you weren't here, I will be running a bunch of DCC adventures for the good old-fashioned World Tour, because my aim is that I'm going to be running at least 10 games, and I'm going to be showing that off, and it's going to be a blast. I'll be running a whole bunch of... For starters, I'll be running a whole bunch of zeroth level adventures, because those are incredibly simple for people to hop in, because you don't need to have played DCC in order to get into it. But then I'll start running level 1, level 2, level 3 adventures, so on. And that's honestly like what I want to do as well, is I really want to like introduce people to different game systems. I really want for 5e people to try out DCC and maybe Old School Essentials and maybe Call of Cthulhu and, maybe all these other game systems, because unfortunately, I don't know if any of y'all have seen recently, but basically there was a lot of, not necessarily controversy, but there were some people that were, very elitist in regards of, oh, 5e only, oh, Pathfinder only. And for some reason, like, these two bands of Pathfinder and 5e people were causing a huge schism on Twitter and on YouTube and wherever else. And I think that's really unfortunate. I think that every single game system has its merits, and most important of all, not every game system's for everybody. But I think what's really important is that you at least try it out. If you're unwilling to, try something out, then you're going to be stuck doing the same thing. So I really think people need to, try out some different things. Oh, goodness gracious. My hair is getting long too. I've been trying out long hair. I don't know if y'all seen, but I'm mostly just a short hair kind of guy, and I've been trying out long hair, and long hair has been weird. Yeah, so yeah, basically I'll be I believe by tomorrow I'll have a solid schedule here, and I'll be posting on YouTube and in my Discord, and you can hop in on all of the fun games that I'll be running. It'll be an absolute clown fiesta, but it'll be a good time. I just want to run a ton of games for people. There's a lot of games that need to be ran, and I'm the one that can step up to the plate and do it. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions of any kind, feel free to chime in. I am more than willing to answer. So, and I guess harken on. In addition to all of the games I'm going to be running here, I'm also going to be publishing more of my magazine that'll be coming out monthly, and I'm actually on the verge of unleashing a whole bunch of content. I unfortunately haven't released too much content in my own name. A lot of the content that's out there is me having written for somebody else, but I want to change that. I really do. I really want to basically, have a name for myself and write a whole bunch of things. And I really want to see, my creative works out there, and I can't wait for that. Do you always DM, or rather, what's your DM to playing ratio? So, right now it's like uh, I guess in total, overall, my DM to player ratio is probably like 90% DM. Right now, it is like 95%. I've got one game where I'm a player, but other than that, I am DM full time. I there's basically when I started all those years ago, I started off as a player, as most people do, and I remember like there was a point where I was like, man, it is so awesome to be a player. But what if instead of tackling scenarios and problems and issues, what if I was the one presenting scenarios and problems and issues and seeing other people overcome them? And I got hooked. I just started running games and running games and running games. And flash forward, I guess like almost 6 years later, like I have ran for hundreds of people, hundreds. I've ran for so many different people, and it's been a blast. 90, so I'll say like 95% DM for life. I just, the call of the DM just allures me way too much. And what tips do you have for those forever DMs out there that want to try playing? Well, one tip is to come to me, because I'll be running a whole bunch of games fairly soon here. Like I said, by tomorrow I'll have like a schedule up and everything, so you can hop in on some of my games. But in regards of your own group, if you have like what I typically hear is most people have like a dedicated single group. I'm a little bit of the oddball. I've DM'd for so many different people all over the place. I wouldn't say I have like one dedicated core group. But what I would say is, I would talk to your players and say, hey, I've been DMing this long. How about one of you DMs to see that if it allures you, whether this, these can be as simple as one shots or like little mini campaigns or whatever. And if the DM bug bites any of them, then that's awesome. Then you can start rotating. Or what could possibly happen is if the DM bug doesn't bite any of them, then at least it gave you a perspective. If you participated in these games where your players now became DMs, like let's say you've got 4 players, right? And all of them rotated, that you ran, a little game from each and every one of them, then you can reflect on your own DMing perspective. You can sit there and say, oh, they did this and I really like that. Or, oh, they did that and, ooh, that wasn't very good, No matter what, you're always learning. You're either learning something to do or you're learning something to not do. So I think just recommending that your players try out a game and run it, you're going to get something out of it. And, that's great. Get players to run games. Either they get hooked or you learn. Win. Dang it. Curse you, Notion. I don't want to create a little thing here. Haha, deal. I'll join your games. Perfect. I'm going to be running a whole bunch here. I'm going to be running a whole bunch of DCC adventures, just wacky, crazy gonzo goodness. I'll be running Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, which I believe are a bit more on the I believe that they're a bit more on the serious side of things. Much like most of the 5e adventures try to be, but like kind of the goofy serious, not hardcore serious. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be posting on a schedule much like this, and it'll be the bee's knees, cat's pajamas, dog's woof. Is this secretly a recruiting drive for your games? I mean, I wouldn't say secretly. It's always a good thing to, like I mentioned before, I've ran for hundreds of people. And much like how, I just mentioned that you learn from seeing other people, I also learn a lot by DMing for other people. If I DM'd for the same core group forever, then eventually I would know them. And, that would mean that I would basically have expertise in, these group of people. And I could cater games perfectly to them. I've taken another approach, though. I've taken this approach of running for a whole bunch of different people. And basically this, in a roundabout way, lets me predict, other random people. And, sometimes it pans out well. Sometimes I get to run for, a bunch of random people, but then it's a ton of fun. And then, of course, sometimes I get some stinkers. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I've ran for people that I wouldn't have at a core game, you know what I'm saying? But that's just part of the territory. And I think definitely for the most part, running for random people, it definitely has made me learn a lot about how people play the game and how people perceive, my play style and all that fun jazz. Versus if I ran for a single core group, there would be a lot that I wouldn't learn. But what I would learn would be more practical for those individuals. So, it's kind of, it's kind of taking and leaving kind of thing. What time will your games be running? Will any of them be convenient for us Europeaners? Yes. So, that's always the common thing is, us Americans, we don't like to, run for you Europeaners, and especially we don't like to run for Australians. But because typically most people, the average game runs in the afternoon, and obviously if it's 5 o'clock in California, then it's middle of night for people in Europe. I personally will be running some games in the morning though, morning for me obviously, but yeah, an appropriate time for you all. So yeah, absolutely, I will be getting Europeaners in, absolutely. And like I mentioned before, with all the running for hundreds of people, I have ran for a lot of Europeaners and people in Asia and people in Australia and so on and so forth. And I completely understand that there's people that have different time zone needs. So I'm accommodating to that. So yes, I will run games for all time zones. It's just an unfortunate thing that these all time zone things exist. I'm actually genuinely curious about that. Could all 7.5 billion human beings all fit in one time zone? I'm trying to think, what's the biggest stretch of singular time zone land? I'm assuming that would be a European time that runs like over the center of Africa. I'm trying to think what time zone that would be. I'd have to look at a map of the time zones. I wonder if you could somehow fit all human beings into like one time zone and just make life easy for everybody. Because this whole like time zone thing is just annoying. It really is. And the funny thing too is like, it's even like an annoying thing for people in America and Canada. Like, I mean, Canada isn't America, but you know what I mean. In the U.S., like, the U.S. has like 5 time zones. It's a lot. It's a lot. Canada has 5 time zones too. I actually know they don't. I think Canada only has 4. I think they only have 4. We have 5. Once again, I'd have to double check on a map. But so that is another thing too. Is one of the biggest killers of all games that are tabletop role playing games ever? One of the biggest killers of games is scheduling, and that is always a big issue because unless you have a core group of people that do not have a shifting schedule, that are always free on these specific times and these specific days, what ends up happening is you got to schedule, and scheduling just takes so much pain. It's such a trouble. And one of the things that I've done personally to alleviate that is to run Westmarch style games, where instead of running for a individual, group of like 3-4 people that shows up at the same time at the same place, instead what I'll do is I'll run a Westmarch's game where 20 to 30 people are in this one game, but I'll schedule a time and say, hey, I'm running a game on Wednesday at 3 o'clock my time. Who wants to play? And then whoever can joins in on the game. We play for however long. And then, we move on to the next session. Okay, the next session I'll be running on Friday at, 10 o'clock. Who wants to join? And that's a really great way to get people involved in a similar world. It's a great way to get people involved in games if they do not have a regular schedule, which a lot of people do not. It's a very great way to run games. And unfortunately, a lot of people have like this romanticized idea that they want to run with a singular core group and they want a high epic tale about their characters and about their journeys with not only these characters but the players at the table. But once again, today's modern age, too many people have rotating schedules. Too many people have things coming up, especially if you're an adult. Too many people have things that just intrude upon the romanticized idea of the perfect game. So I strongly recommend people try out Wes March's games, where you join up with a whole bunch of other people, you join in on games when you can, and you have a blast with it. And that's something I really want to do. Is I really want to go back to running some Wes March style games, and make videos on that too. I really want to do that. So yeah, I should really start getting that up. In a way, basically the games I'll be doing in this next coming weeks kind of will be a Wes March style game, in a sense, because I'll be doing Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, which all takes place in the same location-ish, and then I'll be doing the DCC games, which will be taking place in, I guess, technically the same world. So I'll be doing a lot of that. But I think like what I really want to do is I really want to have like a more dedicated like Wes March's game, where basically I've got like a whole Discord for it, and there'll be maps drawn up, and there'll be like actions you can do in between games, and like actual like in-game time progresses versus like real world time progresses kind of thing. I kind of want to do that. So I'll definitely be looking forward to something like that. Canada has 6 time zones? Oh, what? How do they have 6? Because, like, yeah, the U.S. has 6 with Alaska and Hawaii. That makes sense, but how could Canada... Oh, you know what? Canada extends further... they extend further east. Yeah, they extend way further east. I always forget that because, typically whenever you're looking at a map of the Earth, you see it flat, but the flat map is objectively wrong. Like, that flat map just like makes the proportions of the countries look different. I totally forgot about that. It's funny. I learned that like when I was a kid. Like, it blew my mind because I'd always grown up looking at the flat map of the Earth, and then like I just assumed like, oh yeah, that's totally how it is. And seeing a real map of how the Earth actually is, and it's like, wow, Africa's huge, and Australia is actually the size, like pretty much the size of the U.S. and this and that. It's kind of freaky. Oh, goodness gracious. Goodness gracious sakes alive. I've never had an adventure, at least not off the top of my head. I don't think I've ever had an adventure where like time zones came into effect. I'm actually going to write that down. Whenever I get any sort of inkling about an adventure to write up, I always have to immediately write down adventure time zones matter. Yeah, I honestly cannot think of an adventure where time zones ever came up. When you voice your NPCs, how much work do you do ahead of do on the accent ahead of time? That entirely depends. Some I have to get a sense for well ahead of time. Like, I'll be standing there and be like, oh, well, they're a bit more sophisticated, so they talk like this. Or they're more eccentric, so they talk like this. Or, oh, they're slower but more aggressive, so talk, Sometimes I kind of sort of like, mouth it out. But other times, the way the players see the NPC informs me of how I should actually run that character. Like, or specifically, like, how they sound. Like, I remember, like, one of my more iconic ones was the players met oh gosh, what was he? He was a halfling. And he basically just they saw that this halfling's like a thief, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm a halfling thief, yeah, and I just come up with that, and just yeah, talking like this, burgling's the name, neckling's the game, and just immediately hopping into a voice, and I don't know if I've had more or less success improvising the accent of the character versus thinking about it. I mean, some characters, some NPCs just don't hit as well with the party, and some NPCs do. So how much work do I put in? I'd say half of the major NPCs get some work ahead of time. And, I listened to your villains voice series, and I did enjoy Vladimir Abbott in particular. Yes. And those characters, they really do inform themselves, in regards of Vladimir is this, brooding character who is just sitting there on a throne of, like, despair. And then you got the Abbot, who is this holier than thou character, and those characters absolutely write themselves. There is some major NPCs that are in some of those 5e modules that don't exactly present themselves like that easily, but end up being pretty major to the party. And I think it's really important to act in a way that makes them who they truly are. Now, mind you, voices have nothing to do with how the character acts. There's plenty of DMs that don't do accents for their characters. I just like to do it because it helps me a lot, but one of the best DMs I ever had did not do voices, ever. I don't know if he was physically capable of doing accents or voices or anything, but yeah. I had an idea that Magic Time Zones would let two of my campaigns cross over more than once, even if different lengths of time passed in each. Yeah, I dig it. I don't know if any of you have seen, but in original D&D, like, I'm talking about not just like AD&D or anything. I'm talking about like old school, Gary Gygax and Ernest and all those people. Originally, the idea would be that when you run a session, like, time passes, but then, however it would in game, but then time would pass in the real world as it would in, like, game time. And that was something really odd to think about. Basically, they would like, every player would have a absolute big stable of characters. And so like for this one session, you're playing this, let's say this fighter, and then the fighter levels up, but it takes, however many weeks to level up, because you got to pay someone to train your character in order for them to level up. And then you would just have that character sent off, and you wouldn't get to play that character for like a few weeks. It's really fascinating. If I had all the time in the world, I would actually be totally down to run a game like that. But unfortunately, in today's day and age, I don't have the time to do that. But that would be fascinating. That would be very fascinating. Oh, I totally use voices. I made Strahd's accent distinct. Only Radin's and Vasily shared that accent. The players still haven't picked up on that. Sometimes that's why I like accents too. Is so sometimes they can really help inform the players and or the characters. I really dig that. Totally random question, but how did you get your start on creating content? What was that process like? So here's what happened. I totally cut off the T there. Here's what happened. I was, doing what I do, running my games and all that fun jazz. And all of a sudden, I remember this like vividly. Randomly one day, someone was like, "Oh yeah, you should make a YouTube channel and talk about D&D." And then other people chimed in and said, "Oh yeah, you should do a YouTube channel and talk about D&D." And I remember thinking, I was like, there's so many other people doing that. And then all of a sudden, I was like, wait a second, why not, right? Why not? And then I got to thinking, okay, like if I am going to be doing, YouTube content, what is it going to be? And I got to thinking like, everyone's doing, the top 10 herpy derpy diddly d's, and everyone's doing the cringy Reddit stories, and everyone's doing the 5 things your DM will hate, and I decided like I don't want to do that, at least not right away. So I looked around and I couldn't find anyone covering the adventure modules in depth. Now, I saw people running the adventure modules. I saw people, talking about how they prep their own sessions. I saw people do various takes on it. But I didn't see anyone going in depth about the adventure modules. So I said, you know what? Screw it, I'll do that. And I remember I sat down for like, I want to say it was like 3 weeks. I was sitting there making videos for a channel that did not exist. I sat down and was just recording the Tomb of Annihilation series for like almost a full month. I was just sitting there recording and then editing. But unfortunately, because it was my first time, I didn't know how to speak to a camera. I stuttered a lot. It was just an absolute mess. And also my camera was dookie. And very, very importantly is I didn't know how to edit. So it was just a combination of just terrible things. But most importantly, what I got out of that was the confidence eventually enough to start doing it. And then once I'd recorded a bunch for the Tomb of Annihilation series, then I made the channel. Now, when I sat down, I was like, okay, what's my channel going to be? Because, once again, with all the other D&D YouTubers, they're all, they have either dungeon in their name, dragon in their name, dice in their name, DM in their name, whatever. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I wrote a list of a bunch of things. And I went to all my players and individually, mind you, I didn't go to them as a full group. I went to them individually and asked them, hey, what should my YouTube name be? And universally, every single one of them by themselves, without the knowledge of the other ones, said, your name should be No Fun Allowed. Because it was a running joke in one of my campaigns that someone tried to do something and I said no. And then all the players started banging their hands on the table saying, no fun allowed, no fun allowed. And then that joke just, took a mind of its own, right? So I made the channel and then I just started uploading the videos. And what really, really helped me, I will say, is I got off to a much better start than like 99% of people. Because what's really unfortunate is if you look around hard enough, you can see that there's a bunch of channels that do, tabletop role-playing game content, but they get no views and they got no subs. And then you've also got the polarizing 0.001% of people that have all the views and all the subs. I'm right there in the middle of the 99% and the 0.01%. I'm like right there in the middle. And what really helped me from the beginning was I had a ton of people who subbed to me right away. I had a ton of people that watched my videos right away. I had a bunch of people that recommended my videos right away because I ran for so many different people. because I ran those large games and I had already DM'd for so many different people. So that really, really helped. What is unfortunately going to happen with a lot of people is a lot of people don't have that, not infrastructure, but a lot of people don't have that following right away. Most people that upload their first video, it's going to get next to no views unless it's, one of those algorithm breaker videos, which typically isn't going to be made, right? Even though my first video was Dookie, my first set of videos were Dookie, it built up my confidence to make better content and then make better content. It's still not the best content today, but it's content. And it's just helped me to push on making more and more content, and it's been a blast. I've gotten to meet a whole bunch of cool people. I've gotten to run a whole bunch of great stuff. And I hope that I can take this further and further. So in total, what was that process like? Long and hard, but has totally been worth it. Hey, glad I could make it to your stream. Hey, Ian. I'm debating between running Tomb of Annihilation and Descent into Avernus as my next game. Any thoughts? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So, without going into spoilers for people that may or may not have ran or played through any of these adventures, these are two polarizingly different adventures. They are different in their themes, their tones, their settings, environments. They're different in every single which way. Now, what I am here to tell you is, one, my name is actually in Descent into Avernus. Fun fact. I got to playtest that adventure. But what I will say is, Tomb of Annihilation is an adventure about adventure. Descent into Avernus is an adventure about purpose. Now, weighing the pros and cons of both, what I'll say is Tomb of Annihilation has the pro of the freedom for players to go where they want, when they want, and there'll be something waiting for them. Descent into Avernus pros is that you are, as a DM, presented, these very simple tracks that you can place your players on. Now, the cons of both is that in an open world environment like Tomb of Annihilation, some players may feel lost. Some players may feel like they don't have that sense of drive or purpose. Now, the downside with Descent into Avernus is that because there are these two railroads that your players essentially get to drive on the whole time, your players may feel a bit restricted. Now, that's obviously going to come down to the individuals at your table. It's going to come down to, your wants and needs for a game. But I am here to tell you Tomb of Annihilation is such a fantastic adventure, and I would strongly recommend running it. Now, no matter what adventure you do end up running between these two, there is some alterations that I would make to both of them. Once again, depending on the player's wants and needs. Tomb of Annihilation may be a bit too hardcore for some groups. Descent into Avernus may be a bit too restrictive for some groups, and so on and so forth. But the core chassis of these two adventures is vastly different, and, they present different adventures. I personally would just recommend Tomb of Annihilation because it's a great sandbox for you as a DM to run and explore and flesh out however you want. Descent into Avernus, you have to break it down a lot more to build it up to what you would want it to be, if you were so choosing. So what I'll say is, um, my rec is TOA, but DIA has its merits if you prefer more linear adventures. I've heard that with Descent 2, it's better to skip the Baldur's Gate section. I'm considering do that if I play. That is something that I actually would recommend. Yes. Basically, Baldur's Gate was literally tacked on because they wanted to latch on to the Baldur's Gate name. I think it was a severe, not necessarily misplay because it's not a game, but I think it was a severe, it didn't make sense. I think that basically Descent into Avernus, it didn't need Baldur's Gate, and Baldur's Gate didn't need Descent into Avernus. I think that there could have been two wildly, different products from those. Yeah, so those are my thoughts. I think you missed Mike L's White Wolf question above. White Wolf question. White Wolf question. Oh, what are your thoughts on lesser known White Wolf settings like Scion and Aberrant? Oh, totally missed that. I don't have I guess to quote that Futurama episode, like I've got no strong opinions one way or another. I think all settings deserve their place to shine. I haven't played around with Scion and Aberrant, and so I honestly couldn't tell you. Honestly, couldn't say. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, like, there's so much gaming I need to get caught up on in regards of game worlds and game systems, and I feel like I've genuinely shopped around far more than most people. Like the average person only plays like one or two game systems. I've played quite a number. And I've looked at quite a lot of products. I've looked at quite a number of things, but sadly, haven't looked into that. Your content is great. Question: how many games do you play in an average week? Hey, Axel, thank you for saying my content is awesome. How many games do you play in on an average week? My problem is I don't have an average week. Basically, I've ran and or played in like 8 games in a week, and then I'll run and play in like 2 games in a week. Sometimes my games are feast or famine. And in fact, actually, in the future, and in fact, like tomorrow, I'll be posting up an update on this calendar here, and I'll be running a bunch of public games. And I imagine I'll be running at least 1 public game a day on average. I'm going to be running a ton of games for people, so stay tuned for that. I'll be posting up on the YouTube and on the Discord, so you can join in on those public games, because I want to run games for the Goodman Games World Tour, and I want to run the Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel adventures. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So I'll say feast or famine, anywhere between 2 to 8. Thanks, Mike. Good to have a homonym buddy. Yeah, I just realized Mike and Mike. That's funny. Quick hello to everyone in No Fun. I'll have to watch this later. Thank you, Helga. Thank you. TOA is the published adventure I'm most looking forward to running. How about you, No Fun? What's something you haven't ran yet but can't wait to? Oh my goodness. That's a tough one. Actually, no, it's not. What am I saying? um, the thing that I haven't run but I can't wait to is basically I'm gonna double dip here. I'm working on 2 adventures right now. To give you a quick little synopsis on both of them, one of them is a magical take on Beauty and the Beast. Basically, it's gonna be like a massive dungeon and grounds where it's a riff on Beauty and the Beast, but instead of being a beauty that goes in and gets pampered, you are the adventurers that are looting the place and going up against some wicked monsters. My other adventure that I can't wait to run is a reverse mega dungeon hex crawl. Basically, the synopsis for that adventure is basically there's a long stretch of road, and occasionally, every few weeks, people all of a sudden just disappear off that road. The reason for that is because they get teleported to the bottom of a mega dungeon, and the campaign is to get out of the dungeon. Now, what I really like about what I'm writing up here, because I gotta like what I write, right? What I like about it is that there is, an ecosystem to this mega dungeon, because there's a whole bunch of, people just like you that get teleported to the bottom of the dungeon, and presumably a bunch of them want to get out too. But presumably a bunch of them are just basic commoners that aren't willing to fight. So there is a town at the bottom of this mega dungeon, and the whole adventure is just basically climbing up through this mega dungeon, going up against a whole bunch of factions, and trying to see sunlight once again. So my cop-out answer is my own adventures, slay the beast, and way down in Little Hope. So total cop-out answer, I know, but I totally can't wait to run those. I cannot wait, because I'm doing the early writing for it now, and then once I've got like a solid thing, then I'm going to be running them, and then I'll be making my own additions and revisions and all that fun jazz. I can't wait for that. No problem, thanks. For sure, great content. I was debating what to run after Strahd, and then I noticed you had a good number of videos on Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Yes. Wild Beyond the Witchlight was genuinely one of the more fun 5e modules I've ran in the past little while, because, I think that 5e, I don't think this, I'm going to say I know this. I've ran a lot of 5e as well as a whole bunch of other tabletop role-playing game systems. Each game system has its strengths, and most important of all, has its weaknesses. There is no one game system that is perfect at everything. There is no one game system that trumps all others in every other regard. No. Every game system has its strengths, has weaknesses, has its mediocre parts, whatever, right? When it comes to 5e, 5e excels at certain parts of games. It excels in regards of, presenting a more narrative focus on certain individuals and certain key points. It excels at presenting skill challenges. It excels at, a number of things. Now, unfortunately, what I'm going to say is 5e does not excel in regards of, hack and slash dungeon crawling. Because of the bounded accuracy, because of the CR system, because of the disparity between marshals and casters, because of the length of combat, because of a number of issues. So, Wild Beyond the Witchlight is a fantastic 5e adventure module because it leans in on what 5e does well, and it sort of shies away from what 5e is not great at. And I think that from here on out, the 5e adventure modules need to recognize what the game's strengths are and what its weaknesses are, because some of the adventure modules, don't really seem to acknowledge the game system. I think that when you're writing an adventure module for a specific game system, you need to work with the game system, not be ambivalent to the game system, and not work against it. So I really like Wild Beyond the Witchlight because it makes 5e shine at what 5e is. Another random question. I'm running a game tonight. Need some ideas for some unique magical constructs, Warforged type enemies. Any thoughts? Yeah, totally. So in regards of specifically some like unique magical constructs, Warforged type enemies, what I'll say is play against the typical, like, one thing could be like you could have like a giant like mech that looks like it's, you know, ready for war, but then have it be like a little janitor thing. Or maybe it's like just an engineer and it doesn't have any combat capabilities. But then you've got like these tiny little things that look pathetic and weak, and then all of a sudden they're like shanking ankles. Or they're like going up to hug people, and then all of a sudden they like shoot off an electric surge to zap whoever, you know, they're going up to, right? Try and subvert your players' expectations. Whenever you describe, as you walk into the room, you see a 10-foot tall, you know, 500-pound machine monster that looks at you, most people are going to assume that it's, you know, set phasers to kill or whatever. But if it looks at the party and kind of just waves, you know, and you can start setting up the players for some wacky expectations. So yeah, right there, I have the big janitor bot that does nothing, but then you have the tiny, you know, kill bot that, you know, shanks ankles and electrocutes you or bites your, you know, kneecaps or whatever. Big joke robots, ankle biter bots. And in regards of like sentience, I'd always like despair between the two. Like, I would have some robots be truly just robots that have no soul and no purpose, and they just do what they're designed to do. And then I would also have robots that absolutely have the semblance of, you know, intelligence and maybe, you know, souls, depending on the type of universe that you're running, right? So like, you know, I think a perfect example of that is if you ever watch Star Wars, you know, the robots, they're clearly intelligent, they can make decisions, but they're clearly like dumb to, you know, do various things, right? Maybe you can have disparities between the two. And play with sentience. I doubt that there's no way sentience is an A. There's no way. Love the Beauty and the Beast idea. I do too. So yeah, that adventure is called Slay the Beast. I've already got a bunch drummed up for it. Basically, that adventure is Mega Dungeon style play where you're in the town, you gather up your posse, you go to the dungeon, you go to the grounds, as it were, and you loot whatever you can, and then you have to come back, because if you stay there, you're gonna get killed. And basically, it's just like a repeat process of, you know, you go to the grounds, you go to the castle, you try to loot as much as possible, you come back alive, repeat process. So I've got a bunch written for that, and I can't wait to write some more. I've got a bunch to write on my plate right now, but I'm slowly chipping away at that. Yeah, that Beauty and the Beast idea is gold. Heck yeah, thank you. OMG, have the entire castle of Beauty and the Beast show up, Mrs. Potts throwing scalding hot water on them. Yeah, so I'll share some of my my writings here, because why not? You all are truly awesome people. You deserve it. So basically the Beast is the big boss. He's the big bad, you know, that you basically want to kill, but like when you start off the campaign, there's no way you can kill him because he's way too strong. Some of the bosses include such things as, you know, a clock that can like warp time, candelabras that shoot fire, chandeliers that, you know, play with the light. Um, Closets that like can do like cloth magic, clothing magic, things like that. So those are some of the like air quote mini bosses of the place. So there's gonna be like mini bosses that have their own like special wings and wards, and there's also going to be just the generic air quote generic like random encounter things that are around, such as maybe there is just simple candelabras floating around. Maybe there is just simple like knives and forks and spoons that try and shank you and stuff like that. Just a whole bunch of fun stuff like that. So yeah, I'm plugging away at that. I've got a whole bunch written for that, and I once again can't wait to write some more for that. My two daughters would eat that up. Heck yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've got a lot planned out for it. The thing with those is I am going to be commissioning like artists to do a whole bunch of the fun jazz for it. I'm going to be commissioning artists to draw up the castle beautifully and the castle grounds and some of the mini bosses and the bosses. I cannot wait to get that all up and running, but I gotta write a bit more for that. And once again, I'm also going to be playtesting it beforehand, because I don't want to release something on playtest. I want to run at least like one group through it, if at all possible. But I can't wait for that. Lumiere cast Fireball. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, there's so much there's so much you can do with that, right? One, because the license is non-existent for not Beauty and the Beast, but or I get what is the actual like original fairy tale for that? Is it actually called Beauty and the Beast? I didn't look that up again, but yeah, as long as I do not specifically have any characters that look exactly like the Disney portrayals, it's perfectly fine. Also, fun fact I learned like a few weeks ago, the what do you call it thing? The trademark is up on Winnie the Pooh. So I also have an idea to write up a Winnie the Pooh adventure. But once again, the trademark is up for Winnie the Pooh, so you can make like whatever Winnie the Pooh thing you want, so long as the character does not look like Disney's Winnie the Pooh. Because some crazy people are making a Winnie the Pooh murder movie where like Pooh and Piglet like kill people because the license is up. Some weird wacky stuff. So like I've said, I've got a lot lined up, and what really sucks is I've got a lot lined up right now, and not like almost nothing's coming out. But then there's going to be an explosion of content. I'm going to be having a ton of things. Right now I'm working on a bunch of videos that I'll be releasing. I'll be running a bunch of games like starting next week. I'll be, I'm producing all these like mega dungeon things, and I'm writing for other people, and I'm just doing so much. And my main issue is that I'm a single human being that cannot, multiply myself. If I could just multiply myself and just write twice as much, like that'd be so friggin' fantastic. But alas, I cannot. So yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to the future of the content that I'm producing. I really am. Like, the original fairy tale is French, La Belle et la Bête. I don't know how you pronounce that in French. Is it Bite? Is it Bit? Betty? I unfortunately lack a single French bone in my body. I don't. I haven't. I hung out with one French person in my whole life. Only one. Don't know how to pronounce everything. I know that we Americans say baguette wrong. Or not baguette, croissant. We say croissant wrong. I know that. Okay. Oh goodness. Baguette? Do you want a nice fresh baguette? I think it means Beauty and the Beaten. Oh god. So obviously, like, we, as a modern society, recognize that Beauty and the Beast is a story of Stockholm syndrome. But was the original fairy tale even worse? Like, was the original fairy tale like the Beast beating her? That'd be terrifying. I've not actually read the original Beauty and the Beast, or I guess the Belle et la Bête. So I genuinely don't know. How's it going, Goodyear? I saw you playing with Turin. You and Professor Ponicus there. Oh goodness gracious. OG fairy tales are always messed up, man. At least Grimm's. Yeah, I mean, the classic stepsisters like cutting off their heels or toes to, fit in the shoes. And actually, I've actually got Grimm's fairy tales here for some other project I was working on. Go figure. And I was reading through some of them. And fun fact, the original script is not Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all. The original is Magic Mirror, tell me true, who's the fairest? Tell me who. Isn't that weird? But yeah, I read some of these classics, and some of them are pretty sad, but some of them are actually pretty decent stories. Like, some of them are genuinely like good, like not fables, but what do you call like a story to like teach people? Oh my gosh, is it a fable? I think it's a fable. Yeah, morals, lessons, things like that. The Spice Wars continue. Hi, buddy. How's it going? You've been very quietly. Oh my gosh, Fred. Yeah, so I've been swamped. I literally for the past month and change, I have not been able to, I don't know if you've seen, but my channel did not put out any videos. I was just legit too busy to do anything. I was never actually able to produce any sort of parable. I was never actually able to produce any sort of content, but now that I will be more free, specifically this summer, I absolutely will be doing some roundtables. In fact, actually, I'll do something fairly soon, after I stream tonight. I'll put up a thing about trying to get some people to join in on a game or doing my own roundtable. So I'll be doing that for sure. And Pwn continues to get nuked. Dude, Pwn, I saw Turin just put up a short of he walks in and just nukes all of Pwn's army, and Pwn's just help. Dude, OG Little Mermaid was a much better morals lesson. Yeah. Literally, Disney's rendition is 16-year-old girl runs off and makes a deal with a witch, and no dad would ever be okay. No, screw that. Get back in. Wear a shirt. The original Little Mermaid is horrible. Pain and slavery. Oof. That low-key is a better line, too. Parable. Yeah, I actually do like that line of Mirror, Mirror, tell me true. Who's the fairest? Tell me who. I do like that. I have a question though. How would you handle making deals with Dark Powers and Curse of Strahd, specifically around low-level players dying? Oh, so I made a video on that. In fact, I'll see if I can find it. No fun allowed. Death. So, where the frick would that video be? It'd be my Curse of Strahd guide series, which is freaking 50 videos. Holy crapola. Playlist. But as I'm finding that, there's also something else I wanted to mention. Normally, when you, and by you I mean like the standard human being, whenever the standard human being typed in "no fun allowed" on YouTube, a video would pop up. Not mine, of course, because I'm small. I'm pequeño in the YouTube world. But specifically, a Minecraft video came up. Now, I always made the joke whenever anybody, like, whenever I'd be, like, promoting myself on, I would say, hey, I'm no fun allowed. Click on the second video because the first one's a Minecraft thing and that's not me. Sad fact, that Minecraft YouTuber just recently died. The reason why that person's video would always be like up whenever you looked it up is because that video has millions of views. Yeah, so that guy, he just recently like died. I believe it was last week. He was only in his like 20s, but he was a very successful YouTuber. He had millions of subscribers and, of course, I'd have to check, but probably hundreds of millions of views. Wedding, curse, villains. Oh gosh, where the frick is that video? Death in Barovia. Here we go. So on that depressing note, yeah, so I just posted the video for there, but to answer your question real quick, if you don't want to listen to my 17-minute video there is, how do you handle death is, if they die, like you just let them die, you know, through the course of natural play, and if they die, describe to them the scene of their soul not wandering off to whatever plane of existence that they thought their soul would be in, but instead their soul being trapped in eternal darkness and damnation. And as they're wafting through this sea of darkness and eternal damnation, then a hand extends out to them saying, I can grant you the gift of life. Do you accept this gift? And if they accept, then they're brought back to life, but then they get some, you know, deformation, the abnormality. And their soul is now somewhat bound to the land and to the dark powers. That's what I'll say. Extend deal to them in death. They receive gifts. Oh yeah, wasn't there some controversy about people spam posting videos of his death? Here's how this works. Because he was a big YouTuber, literally, you know, millions and millions of subs and views and whatever, naturally, his death is going to be the trending, number one. So naturally, if you want to make money, what you do is you make a quick, you know, 8-minute video talking about his death, and you post up, you know, his avatar, and you put in all the hashtags and thumbnails and everything, all about this guy whose name is Technomancer. And naturally, people were getting called out because people were legitimately profiting off of this guy dying. And some people were try to be a bit more subtle than others. Specifically, there was a YouTube channel that put out 22 videos, I believe it was, like in the span of like 48 hours of his death. Like, this person was pumping out video after video after video all about this guy who had just died. Because they wanted to make money off of it, of course. So pretty scummy stuff. Pretty scummy stuff. Also, some people tried saying like they were trying to make money off of it like a fundraiser. But it was obvious that, you know, they were earning more than like what they were putting into the fundraiser. Things like that. Really scummy stuff. Real scummy stuff like that. That is what people do. They scum it up. That is what people do. Ah. Oh, goodness gracious sakes alive. Whoo-wee. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, so I've been going for how long? I started at 2:30, so I'll go for a little bit more. I'm feeling spicy right now. I can go for a bit more. So yeah, once again, if anybody has any and every question, comment, concern, complaint, gripe, just general observation, you can feel free and tell me. I have noticed that a few people have tried to make YouTube channel names that sound and look like yours. What? Who? Who? Who dares? I need names. I need faces. Who the frick is trying to supplant me? It's funny, actually, when I started my channel, because I basically was committed to the name No Fun Allowed, I looked around, and there was like 13 other channels on YouTube named No Fun Allowed. Every single one of them, except for one, was inactive. And like the only other one only had like, the biggest one only had like 250 subs. So I didn't feel really, and mind you, that 250 sub one was like inactive. So I didn't feel bad about taking the name No Fun Allowed. Doppelgangers. Who the frick? Who's trying to... Who is it? Fred, tell me who it is. Who is it? I didn't know. I'm a blind person, so I appreciate your adventure summaries. Thank you. Yeah, that's so that is genuinely something that I got relatively early on. Early on, like it was my Rime of the Frostmaiden videos, which I like were only like a month into my channel. Early on, I had people that are blind, people that are vision impaired, people that are what do you call that thing? Dyslexic, and people that are I had a whole bunch of different people tell me that my adventure summaries genuinely help them, and that is an awesome feeling. It really is, because I promise you, I absolutely promise you, like most game companies do not take into consideration blind people. I'm willing to bet that's the case, and I really hate to say that because it sounds awful, but it's the truth. Like when it comes to like maps are typically a big deal when it comes to these adventures. And sometimes, the description of the room isn't good enough to paint the picture. When it comes to writing a whole bunch of wordy essays in adventure, sometimes some people can't pick it all up because maybe their attention deficit, or maybe because, the words and how they're scrambled up in there, so on and so forth. There's a lot of people that would genuinely be benefited by someone that would either, have like a verbal, like read aloud text, or if they were, like, I'm just trying to think of the word, like, if there was like a legitimate like thing from game companies that assisted people, that'd be awesome. But I'm willing to bet you that they either don't care, or they've overlooked it, or it's too expensive, or something. But it feels awesome for me personally to get those comments. It really does. Like, that's great. Spill that tea. Check the channel end screen insert option on an unpublished video. End screen insert option on an unpublished video. Like, what do you mean? Like, are you saying that there's like people that have the channel No Fun Allowed, and are they like trying to co-opt me? Is that what they're doing? Because, like I said before, like there's a bunch of channels named No Fun Allowed, but they're all like nobodies. And by nobodies, I mean like they gave up a long time ago. Not to disparage anyone. I'm just saying like they're nobodies, as in they are no longer people because they gave up on YouTube. Like, I just typed in No Fun Allowed on YouTube, and yeah, there is a bunch of there's a bunch of channels named No Fun Allowed. But I think they've all surrendered. I use D&D Beyond, but your videos help me string the plots together point by point. Heck yeah, thank you. Yes. Yeah, so yeah, I just looked, and I don't think any of them are active from what I could just from my just cursory glance here. Like 6 subscribers, 1 video a year ago, 6 subs, 11 videos from 7 years ago. I'm not terribly concerned. 96 videos, 66 subs. Oof. But that was like 7 years ago. I'm sure everyone unsubbed from them. 43 videos, 29 subs from 9 years ago. Holy guac. Also, there's a bunch of weebs with No Fun Allowed. Like there's a bunch of people that their name is No Fun Allowed, but they've got anime avatars. Like, come on. I don't want to be looking like a weeb out here. Same, Mike, ADHD. Yeah, that's that's honestly something that once again, I think that genuinely, like, as big a company as Wizards of the Coast is, they should genuinely have like some sort of like maybe not necessarily official, but like some sort of like position of people that streamline adventures to like people, or to just have them read aloud, or something along those lines. Like, I mentioned this at the beginning, but I don't know if any of y'all were here, but the most important part of a game is the beginning, because if you do not hook people in the beginning, there is no middle or end. They're not a repeat customer. Traditionally, how people are getting into 5e is they get told, hey, play 5e, and from what we can gather, 50% of the people run these modules, and if they're running these modules and they aren't good, then your first experience can suck, and if your first experience sucks, you probably don't have a second experience. Is there something wrong with anime avatars? All I'm saying is I'm a weeb, but I gotta look like I'm not a weeb, okay? That's all I'm saying. The trick to being a weeb is you gotta present yourself in a non-weeby manner. Mike Leonard, I would have thought yours would be ADHC, so it's one letter different to mine. Yeah. So yeah, harkening back on Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast is the most money makingest. They are the most money makingest tabletop role playing game company ever of all time. They're the only competition that they have right now is getting just absolutely destroyed by them. Wizards of the Coast outmakes and outproduces what do you call those people, Paizo, by leaps and bounds, by absolutely tremendous margins. So it would make sense that if Wizards of the Coast wanted to continue to have that disparity, that absolutely monopoly, that they would do things such as having the read alouds or having people that do the official like hey, here's how you streamline this and here's how you do that. Because like I you know what, I'm gonna look at their channel right now. I'm gonna look at the Dungeons and Dragons official YouTube channel because I know that they have been doing things like on their channel, but I'm willing to bet it's not good enough. Like I can see right now that they're cashing in on good old fashioned what do you call it thing? Stranger Things with oh yeah, who's Vecna? And they put up a bunch of videos on Vecna. But for the most part, it looks like the majority of the content Wizards of the Coast is producing is just interviews with some of the authors of their own stuff and live plays. And I'm unfortunately here to tell you, live plays are probably not the most effective way to get people hooked into D&D. I'm willing to bet that's the case. Like, I think that they need to, like, look at, like, I think they maybe, I don't know. I think they need to do something, though. No DM roundtable live play sessions or one-shots in the future. I absolutely will. Yeah, so as a friendly reminder, I will be hosting a whole bunch of live games. If I can get this freaking mouse over here. And I'll be posting all of that up. Basically, these are going to be public, and I am going to try and get a whole bunch of YouTube content creators in the games as well. I think that could be a ton of fun. And I just want to get... I'm going to be running a ton of games. I'm going to be running not only Dungeon Crawl Classics, but I'll be running a whole bunch of the Radiant Citadel as well. Watching you people play would be a blast. Thank you. I think it would be. I certainly would run these people through the ringer because my DMing style is unlike a lot of the other people's DMing styles from what I can gather. And I think it'd be fun to show people the naughty side of DMing. Do I think Paizo does a better job of inclusion? Ooh, that's spicy. I think probably the short answer is yes. So, Wizards of the Coast, you know, they're a company. At the end of the day, all companies are companies, and companies do company things. I think that, like, you know, for the most part, companies try and always play it safe. For the most part, companies always try and, you know, ride the fence. For the most part, companies try and, you know, bandwagon on things. For the most part, right? There's obviously some companies that, you know, do things that tip the balance, or they try and, you know, be the forerunners of certain things. And to that regard, Paizo has, in fact, done things ahead of the curve of Wizards of the Coast. For example, being in regards to slavery. Slavery, you know, take of it what you will in regards of what it means to our tabletop role-playing games. But Paizo has just straight up said, hey, we are no longer going to have slavery in our games ever. You know, and when Paizo does that, inevitably, people at Wizards of the Coast are going to have to be sitting there saying, oh man, we've got to, like, do something too. We got to think of, you know, like what do we do to, you know, the growing, you know, consumer base? What do we do here to get people to look at us? What do we do to be the good guys or whatever, right? I'm willing to bet that Paizo is more willing to take risk than Wizard of the Coast is, because Paizo is smaller. They have a lot to gain, and because Wizard of the Coast is much bigger, they have a lot to lose. And also specifically because Wizard of the Coast is not their own company, but in fact, you know, subservient to Hasbro. I'm sure Hasbro has their fingers in, you know, the pie there, and not the Paizo, of course, but in Wizard of the Coast pie, and probably has certain mandates. I'm willing to bet. I don't know the full details. I'm not some sort of, you know, market expert in any of that regard. I don't know. I don't sit on any of the meetings, but I'm willing to bet that Paizo would probably always be one step ahead of the curve of Wizards of the Coast. And Wizards of the Coast has a lot to lose. And, you know, that's really the unfortunate part, too, is, you know, there's obviously, like, a lot of turmoil in regards of when some of the newer products are coming out, and, you know, some people of one political viewership are going to say, oh, da-da-da, and then the other side is going to say, oh, da-da-da. And it is really unfortunate that no matter how you look at it, there's always going to be politics in our game. Like, no matter what, I know there's going to be some people that say, oh, no politics in my game, but no politics means that there's politics in your game. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just inevitable. So, is what it is. In fact, I don't know if y'all noticed, but I made a video on Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, and there was a lot of negativity on it. There was a lot. I had to take it down because it was becoming it was not becoming great. One of my favorite things about How to D&D's roundtables is the expression on Wally DM's face, like he just accidentally wandered into a sane asylum. I whenever I'm like with specifically Fred and Wally, it's so funny because like they have their own things that they say, and I already know how they're gonna tick. And I'll purposely like just say something just completely outlandish and just to get a jolt out of them. I purposely like just say things just to rile people up, and it's just the funniest thing ever. Like I just love like just messing with those guys because it's a blast. Oh man. But yeah, poor Wally DM. He's always trying to not rock the boat, and there I am, you know, just poking holes in the bottom of it. Oh goodness gracious. Oh, goodness gracious. Ugh. Oh. So yeah, Yeah, so as a quick recap, I'm going to be running a ton of public games. I'm going to be running some Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'll be running Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, and that is all coming up. I'll be posting up on YouTube. I'll be making like a quick little video on hey join, and I'll be making these community posts on these calendars, which will be updated with the games running at what time. I'll be doing that. I'll be, I'm going to be pumping out more content regularly. My D&D magazine is in fact coming out monthly. This month I am doing Volume 7 Magic Towers, so that'll be fun. A whole bunch of magic items and magic, little supplemental stuff. I'm working on a bunch of things, and once again, it's really unfortunate that right now I'm working on a bunch of things versus just working on one thing at a time. But what that's gonna mean is in the future, I'm gonna be able to release a ton of things, and there'll be a nice spread of content for people to enjoy, and I'm gonna have a nice little catalog for people to peruse, and I can't wait for that. I'm gonna be having, stuff for different styles of play because people want different things. I'm gonna be having adventures, like role play adventures and combat adventures and mega dungeons and, quick little like small dungeons. In regards of like the DM tool front, I'm going to be having new mechanics, new spells, new, feats, new monsters. I'm going to be having a bunch of content, and I can't wait to show all that off because I think it'll be a blast. Cannot wait. Alrighty. Well, that has me been going for 2 hours now. So if anyone is still listening, then thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for liking. Thank you for just existing. Thank you so much for all of that because y'all have been delightful. I got through a ton of questions. That was dope. I got through a ton of cool questions there. So yeah, it was an absolute blast. I can't wait to run games for y'all. I can't wait to show off all the cool content that I'm making for y'all. I can't wait to show off all of that because it's going to be dope. But that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to my wonderful Patreons or patrons. Thank you all so much for that because y'all really do, like anything and everything y'all do goes a long way. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you for all of that. But that is going to do it for me. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.